if we're talking about mental health, why I have a dislike for the word, um, people mix it with mental illness. It's not the same thing. We uh, Even on TV now, we see people talking about mental health a lot more, but not always in a, a positive way. And that's the stigma that's attached to it, uh, has made it a negative word. So when I talk about mental health, it's just one of our healths. Just like your physical health is one of your healths, so is your mental health. And it's 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 got so many common connotations around it to being negative. So when we talk to people, I talk to people all the time on a pitch often and ask them, uh, who has mental health here, and not, some of them times you don't get any hands up, and that shocks me that people don't think they even have it. Um, and then when I explain to them that is just like your physical health, do you have, what's your physical health level? They go, oh, okay, I understand that. So for me, the term should be phrased or called mental fitness. It needs to be mental fitness, because the word has gone so far negative now that we need to phrase it differently. We need to be talking about our mental fitness. Everyone, when I speak to them about their mental fitness, they can tell me a level they're at. They can tell me where their mental fitness is at. They could be really good, and that's great, but it can also be low. And that's, we need to be looking at why our levels are low, and the shame that comes with the term mental health, the shame, the almost isolation for individuals that seek help around mental health is so bad. So I would scrap the word if I could, just scrap it and restart it around mental fitness. There's other words coming in now, which again, not that they're bad words, but well-being. It's a great word, but it's what does it mean? It's very fluffy almost. And so when I talk, and I've worked with people in this field for a long time, and the best way I've ever heard anyone describe it is it's the art of being well. So it's not well-being, it's the art of being well. It's how we do things to be well. And when we talk about mental fitness, I don't mean doing Sudoku or like, the Nintendo brain trainer and things like that. That's not what it's about. It does encompass some of that, the art of being well. So lots of things I try to focus on, especially even for myself, is, sleep, water, my connections with others, in connection to myself. Purpose is another one, and nutrition. Mental illness is totally different. So I don't want to get people saying, no, he doesn't believe in mental health, or she disagrees with the word. Mental illness is different, but we all have mental health, and we're just at different stages of it. And that's what we need to recognize, that we all have we're all at different parts. And as we go through our lives, we will be at different levels of health within our minds. So complex needs is one I always hear a lot of. So people are complex needs. Like, we need to do something about complex. Humans are complex. We are complex beings. Like, the one of the problems I have with, going to a doctor and trying to fight for an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning, trying to get even a telephone appointment, to then have 15 minutes in front of someone and try to explain to them what's going on up here in the brain, tell them what's going on when you don't really know. And they don't really know either, because you can't express it. And if you're lucky, if you get the 15 minutes full. So a lot of what I'm trying to promote is around people doing the things to look after themselves, and letting people know why those things, because again, it's great to say meditation can do X, Y, and Z, and it's great to do. Say, you know, if you did yoga, this would happen for you. But unless you explain it to me and tell me the science behind it and the reasoning behind, I don't know if you get my buy-in. And so I've had to learn to, and a big process of that is about learning. So I've learned lots on my journey, and I'm still on that journey, but I'm learning all the time, and almost that hunger for learning has helped me become mentally stronger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Do you think with the businesses and the individuals that you talk to, especially within the elite sports community, that's probably one of the biggest things? It's like, you know, I need to know why I need to do this.
When we're talking mental fitness, I think there's the stigma almost disappears, because we're looking, oh, how can I work on it? And I'm looking to improve, it almost sounds like. Whereas mental health is still seen as a weakness, is still seen as a big weakness in, you know, even in those arenas. And there's been a lot more publicity around it with celebrities and sports people and people taking time out for it. But you only have to look at people not getting selected to know that it, you know, that has a big part on their mental health as well. And that's a lot of the things, you know, we come across is people looking weak. So if you're on a pitch, whether you're, you know, if you're playing in a game, you're a warrior, aren't you? You're playing against another team, and if someone is struggling behind the scenes, you know, it's almost seen like, should we pick that person because they're struggling at the moment, you know? And it's seen as such a weakness to have any issues around mental health. That's why I feel it's still very much in the light.
There is a fine line between mental sacrifice, mental fitness, and, you know, I think now the lines are being blurred slightly. I think you probably need some sort of mental strength and quote unquote mental sacrifice to actually achieve amazing things within your career, within your personal life, etc. I would literally love to get your opinion.
Oh, it's a good question. Don't know if I like the word sacrifice, because I think more anyone on their journey, right? You have to think about comfort. So if you are comfy, it's usually because we're doing the things that make us comfy, but there isn't a lot of growth in comfort. So discomfort, I would say, is probably more a term that I would use with people. So if I was working with people, I would thinking there has to, so that's where the sacrifice, that's what I'm trying to say, is the sacrifice is more of what's uncomfortable to you. So you've got your comfort zone, where we're getting out of that comfort zone. And so I would say definitely there has to be some discomfort, and maybe you know, sacrifice is you're sacrificing your comfort. That's where it's at. You're sacrificing that so you can grow. And there's so many things in nature, even, you know, I talk to groups around lobsters often, you know, and they have shells, and those shells don't grow. So, you know, they grow inside the shell, and when they get to a certain bit where it starts to get uncomfortable, they go under a rock. They'll shed that shell off. It'll break off. They have to stay under the rock for a little bit because they're vulnerable, but then the shell will grow again, and then they will be bigger. So they come out bigger and stronger because of that discomfort. So yeah, definitely there is something, you have to give something to gain something, and it's usually around discomfort. I mean, you don't, couch to 5K is a great one for people, because you don't just get up and go and do the 5K unless you're naturally blessed. But if you take those stages through that program, you become more uncomfortable the further up you go, and it's almost trying to beat your brain around what your body can do. And that's the biggest battle, it's the brain telling you what you can and can't do.
I would just love to get your like three, I say, major steps in terms of cultivating an amazing mindset.
Yeah. So we use something ahead in the game. We use like a three-pronged kind of process, which we call focus, plan, and action. So the focus is getting the mindset right. So those things are doing the basics, but also focusing in on what's the thing we're trying to win at. What's the thing we're trying? What's the ultimate aim? I'm not even a big fan of the word goals, because when we have a goal, there's kind of an end point to it, and I prefer to look at these things as journeys. So I like to think of aims. What's the person's aim? And long term, because once we hit that goal, we know it's kind of done. Like, ask a marathon runner to do a marathon 2 months after they've done a marathon, and they tend to say, "Oh, I can't because I'm not training anymore." And that's the thing. So what's the ultimate aim for the person? So that's really where we try to dig down on the focus, but also getting their mind right. So that is, really to focus on those basics. Sleep. You can have the best nutrition, you can have the best routine, you can have everything. If you have poor sleep, none of that's going to matter. None of that's going to matter. You need good sleep. So that's where we get people to focus. Then we get them to plan. So getting people to plan is your resources. It's like, do I have the stuff to get this ready? Do I have a plan in place to make sure that I can, be accountable to this? And if I'm not doing these steps, will I get to that ultimate aim I'm looking for? And then the action part is around getting out of this and doing. It's the biggest one. It's great you've got your focus. It's great you've got your plan, but unless you action it, nothing's going to happen. So that's kind of getting out of the head, getting into the body, doing. So that's kind of our like 3-step process to working with people and trying to help them improve. But a lot of it is around the basics. People don't do the basics well. The big stuff does not matter. And, you can say that in any sports game, whether it's football, rugby. If your passing game's no good, you're not gonna win games. And so focusing down on your personal, individual basics is key to success.
You've spoken about sleep a couple of times. What's the benefits of sleep?
It's really down to consistency, I always think. So regardless, if you find a pattern that works for you, that's key. For me personally, what I recommend to people is that 7 to 8 hours. I go with the basics on that because that's what we would have had, when we were in caves. And going to sleep and waking up at the same time. We have such a bad habit in our nation of snoozing. Snoozing is losing. I said the things that happen to our body when we wake up, we should embrace, even if we feel a bit groggy. Your body fills up with cortisol, the stress hormone, and that's there to keep you awake, and so you're alert. So if you've got a threat, you're awake and you can go, right? So when we go, let's just snooze it for 5 minutes, we're then snoozing with this stress hormone running through our body. It's not good for us. So that 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes extra, and you think it's great for you, it's really not. So the keys are go to sleep at the same time if you can, and wake up at the same time. And you'll find once you get into that, and we teach quite a lot around circadian rhythms and the 24-hour clock, and how if you get into that rhythm and you actually get into the same time up, same time down, you feel better. You generally feel better. And another big one, working in the mental fitness field, I should say, is people underestimate the daylight savings. Like that's coming up soon, and I'll be talking to people about that and saying, "Are you prepared?" Because we will lose an hour's sleep. People think, I don't know, the time I deal with most safeguarding or any crisis is usually the week after, and I'm now starting to learn to prepare people for it, because again, if you lose an hour, it's so precious, and that's only 1 hour, but it changes everything in your rhythm, and that can change the way we feel. So yeah, definitely sleep is key.
What is your unpopular opinion about sports athletes?
Ooh, unpopular opinion. This is a tough one, but it's not really unpopular about them. It's unpopular to the, we see people coming out of academies. We see, who don't quite make it. We see people. I mean, definitely rugby has this better than football, but it's the education system within that. So it's what's the plan B? I was, one of those that didn't have a plan B and then ended up in a bad way, because of that. And I see it with academy players all the time. They don't have that. It's that throwing the eggs in one basket, and when it doesn't turn out. So I wouldn't say it's unpopular. It's well known, but I think the system needs to change, where it's okay if you don't make it, and there's some plan and support after that. Some, like I said, some sports do it better than others. And then also, kind of unpopular, influencers. So social media influencers. I can think of one in particular, and I admire the man, but he will make you feel bad at the same time. So it's like, he's a very athletic person, but music shouldn't be known as a crutch. That's all I'm going to say. Like, music shouldn't be a crutch. Like, music, if you're out there running, good on you. You know what I mean? And if you've got music, blast it. I don't care. That's great for you. Music's underrated. It's tribal. It's it's actually it sends messages to us that we wouldn't get. It also makes you feel good. It also has memories attached to it. So you can use. There can be bad music as well. You can have memories that come from bad music, but you can have some fantastic. If it makes you feel good, the dopamine level raising listening to your favorite music in the start of the day. It's amazing. But yeah, there's certain influencers that will say you've got to do this and you've got to do it because you've got to be a man and you've got to do this and you got to just be hard, stay hard. So, and that kind of stuff is kind of negative when it comes to people who are not able to get there. They need that support to get there. And I think listening to our consumption of social media as well is far too much, and it's noisy.
You spoke briefly about your own experiences in an academy system. I would love to know a little bit more about your own story and actually how you've got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I used to play rugby. I loved it. I didn't know if, it's one of those things, you don't know if you're ever going to make it or not, but you're excited, you're there. I ended up getting injured, and I broke my collarbone in 2 places, and I dislocated both my arms in the end. So I couldn't play anymore. And that's where, your purpose kind of flips upside down. It's like, what have I got to do? So I kind of fell into work that, it wasn't my passion, but it was what I had to do. I had nothing else to do. So I kind of fell into work, and then I started to not look after myself. So when you're playing sport and doing it, you have a certain diet, you train a lot, you live and breathe it. But when you don't have that, all of a sudden, you've still got some of the habits and stuff. So you might be eating way too much if you're not working out. And that's where, you know, I think at my worst, I got to 25 stone at my worst. And I didn't do the things that were looking after me. I ended up drinking heavily. My relationship with my family was really poor, and I had a loving family. Like I've not had a hard life, and I don't want anyone to think I've had a hard life. I have got a loving family. I had a few incidences as well that happened. So environmental. I had a good best friend of mine die on a motorbike. I had some issues with a girlfriend at the time, and I had a small amount of debt. And when I'm talking small, I mean compared to my mortgage now, it's a small debt. You know, it was a few £1,000s, nothing big. But everything became uncontrollable. I couldn't get my head around how, whatever I tried to look at the situation, I couldn't think of a clear path. And so where everything seemed uncontrollable, I thought, the thought process through my head was, the best thing, if that person would be happier, that would go, this would happen, was if I decided to try and take my own life. So with me doing that and having a plan, I kind of became, it was kind of euphoric, because it was the first thing I felt like in a long time I could control. And that was my choice. And I remember it well, because it was like, I know what I'm going to do. And so you start to change your mood. So when we say to people, look out for signs, if they've been low for a long time and then all of a sudden things change, it's not always a good thing. Because I'd done that, and I'd also started to reach out to people and, you know, said how much they meant to me, and you know, that I love them and stuff like that. And no one would have known at the time, but it seemed so logical in my head that this was the right step to do. And I remember coming to my attempt day. It's very difficult. People that say, oh, it's a coward's way out, like it, you know, it takes some guts. And but then that brings me to, you know, after the event, after I came out of hospital, where I felt a lot of embarrassment and shame around it. I didn't know how to seek out. I actually sought counselling as help. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I tried to explain it to family and friends as well, but it wasn't easy for them. They felt like they failed me as well, I feel. And but they hadn't, you know, and that was a key point. Difficult conversations are going to be the thing that we have to all have. And I think that's what I promote to people all the time. Have a challenging conversation. So I'd rather you think that I'm being overcautious than me saying the same words at your funeral. So I've had some of those difficult conversations. I'm still, you know, talk to, you know, some of the people that were around me at the time around it, because I wanted to find out what it was like for them as well, which is you know, it's difficult. But I then spent probably 5 years after that just not looking after myself, like really mentally not looking after myself. And I didn't know where to go for help. Like, I explained the issues with doctors and, you know, sometimes trying to fight for that appointment. And it's not all doctors. I'm not, you know, blanket stating this, but it's hard. It's hard for me to explain what's going on up here if I don't know what's wrong. And I didn't have, you know, people talk about suicide and mental illness and say they're interlinked, but I didn't have a previous. Yeah, I may have been showing signs of depression before it and an unhealthy lifestyle, but it was out of the blue for people, and that's key. They're not the same thing. I wasn't mentally unwell or have mental illness or diagnosed, but I was in that mind space. And so fast forward a few years later, I end up working with, in the field. I've always been in the charity field, so I've always worked with people and wanted to support people. And in some ways, I recognized that I was doing that as a deflection for me. So if we concentrate on you and support you, don't need to worry about me. And I started to recognize that. I love supporting people, but it very much was a deflection of, let's not worry about me. You're the one that needs, so I'm going to support you. And I started to make some changes. So I really started to make some changes. Coming up to the pandemic, especially, where I started to learn about my mental fitness. I started to learn more about well-being and the art of being well. And I had some great people along the way that I've met and, have been like a sponge around. And I learned that there's some key elements of doing these basics and doing them consistently, and would make, if I can get my focus on my brain and making my mind fitter, then my body will be fitter. I'll be more resilient. I'll find purpose in the kind of journey, rather than it being, I want that goal and that's what I want, that's what I'm going to get. But if I found like the journey enjoyable, which is what I have done, it has its ups and downs, like, anything. But I really found it, if I found the journey enjoyable, I found that I've made peace with that. That it is a little bit uncomfortable, but look at what we're going to, what we're achieving. Look at where we're going. Look at that milestone go. Look at this one. Where's the next one? So yeah, that leads us up to the pandemic, when the world changed, really. Changed for everyone.
No,
go on. Sorry.
No, carry on. Sorry.
Well, no, it's just during the pandemic, because obviously we worked for a homeless charity at the time, and people struggled. People were really struggling, and I noticed in one hostel that, you're asking the most socially isolated group to isolate from society again. It's like you're asking them to double isolate. And so in one of the hostels, we saw that 3 people had taken their own lives in 1 week. And that's so bad. It's so bad that those 3 people, and maybe, it does have a domino effect sometimes. But those 3 people felt that was the only option for them. And I've been there. And so very much within the game, it was about what can we create to make sure that people know there's something in the future that we can look forward to. And that's where it started with it was a football match to start with. That's all it was a football match. And here we are today.
Wow. What was the most uncomfortable conversation that you had with yourself once you came out of hospital?
That's a great one. With myself, or with
with yourself?
Something's got to change. That I remember thinking to myself, something needs to change. You're not sure how, and I really wasn't sure how, but something needs to change, and something needs to change quick. But I didn't know how, and so again, that's when the floating happened, because I felt lost. I felt really lost. But that was definitely the most difficult bit after hospital. Obviously, I had the difficult conversations with people around me, but with myself, something needs to change. Because there's also a fear of going back down that route as well. And as I enter my 40s, that I'm becoming a target group again. So as being a male and being 40, I become part of that. So there's always in the back of my mind, it's always there, like, am I going to feel bad again? What do I need to do? But I'm much more aware of the things I need to do. And I just sometimes need to make sure triggers and that I know how to reach out for help now, which I never used to do. I never used to know that as a young man. I never knew how to reach out and ask for help. I do now. So although it's there and I know it, I'm in a much better place now.
I would actually love to know the worst piece of advice now, like looking in hindsight, that you have ever told someone else.
Oh, that I've ever told someone else.
Yeah.
I think back to when I was younger, definitely when I was younger, and not so clued up on around mental health. But when someone was going through bad times, I would, use cliches, and I would use, I would tell people, it's going to be all right. You're going to get over this, and that's not what people. I love to support people, so I think by sometimes saying and trying to fix is one of the things I've had to work on over the years. I still do it every now and then, but I try to fix, and sometimes, that's not what people want. They want to be listened to. People want to be heard. They want you to speak to them. They want you to connect with you, but they don't want you to fix them. And I can think back to when I've just told someone to, kind of get on and do. And, before I was in this world, I used to use some of the, poor terminology, like, it's not that bad. You'll be all right, and I think we do that to people way too much. Like at the start when we had the conversation, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm great. It's so, and then when we dig deeper, it's a deeper conversation. Whereas we have them daily with work colleagues. It's so superficial. It's on the surface, and I've kind of got over that. And I'm all right to put people on the spot, feel difficult or feel awkward, or because I actually care, and I think that's what people want.
And how do you think playing football, playing rugby, or actually playing group sports, especially, can actually help with like someone's mental fitness, and also their mindset?
Teams are great. So team sports. I mean, even solo sports are great, but like team sports, people coming together, they've got one common goal. It's that aim that they're going to, win something or be the best. And I think that's the positives of it. Like, there's so much togetherness within that, and it's everyone plays their part. And if for a personal point of view, it's about whether that's a work team or a football team or any kind of team, you're all trying to strive for the same kind of goals. You're trying to get to the same place, and I think within that, it gives you an individual purpose along with other people, and it's that camaraderie kind of come together. I think that's the best thing about any team sport. And also, if you've got a good team, the peer support that you get, that's unbreakable. You get good people around you. You don't have to be the best team in the world all the time, but if you can have people you can really rely on, that's gold. That's absolutely crucial.
And who's one sports personality or actually someone in the public eye who literally embodies mental fitness, and someone that we should be looking at a lot more?
It's a good question, mate. That's a really good question. So there's someone that I really like. I mean, McLean. I can't remember his first name. McLean. Jay. I'm sure it's a J. From Manchester, and he does. He's an influencer, but he does disability training with people. I can't remember his name now. It's really embarrassing. I'm going to remember it in a minute. but he does disability training with people, and that guy to me embodies like not only his own looking after himself and doing stuff and raising awareness as well, but also for what he does for those people, what he does for the people with disabilities, and he trains them in his gym and he pushes them and breaks down their beliefs and boundaries or their limitations. He breaks them down, and for that man is an absolute hero. I really like him. If anyone can set that up online as well, where we get to, oh God, I would fanboy him. He's just he is just somewhat selfless as well, and I see it, genuine selflessness in him. And
what's his name? Something McLean.
Yeah, McLean. I'm sure it's.
So the influencer is Javano
McLean. I think his name Javano McLean.
Javano McLean. What's the kind of one thing that you'd love to say to anyone that's kind of probably at a crossroads in their personal life, and how can people find you and your charity?
Yeah, so I think one bit of advice I would give people who are struggling is to just take one thing and focus on that one thing. And like I said, if you can go to the basics, it's brilliant, but just to focus on that one thing and make that one little win for you, and celebrate it. Make sure that you've done that one thing. And it might seem so trivial, it might be, we talk to people. When I'm in a bad place, I struggle with my cleaning my room or even making a bed and things like that, and those small victories are actually huge. But if you're in a really dark place, do seek professional help. Do reach out to people and make sure you get the support you need. And there are plenty of support that's out there for people. The best way to find out where we are and what we're doing and which football clubs we're working with and what areas we're working in, so you can take part. If you're looking and struggling and you want to change the way you are, things that are going on for you at the moment, the best way is to follow our socials. If you want to get in contact with myself, if you email info@headinthegame.co.uk, we'll get back to you. But yeah, that's the best ways, the socials, because we do pop up in areas and do work. We've got some work going on with Chelsea at the moment, and we've got we're working down in Dartford at the moment as well, all the way down to Dover, and we're going to be starting our women's sessions up in Charlton in April as well. So looking forward to that. So yeah, find out from the socials. On there, you can go through to our website. On our website, there's all the sessions you can sign up for and get support